Here, at this final hour, in this quiet place, come to bid farewell to one of its brightest hopes, extinguished now and gone from us forever, 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 forever. His home of homes, where he worked and where he struggled and fought and fought and fought and fought, where his heart was and where his people are. It is therefore most fitting that we meet once again to share these last moments with him. This beleaguered, unfortunate, but nonetheless proud community has found a braver, more gallant young champion. This Afro-American who lies before us is unconquered still.
Maybe someday they'll come back.
Is this some test?
No, no tests. You're an interesting species. An interesting mix. You're capable of such beautiful dreams. And such horrible nightmares. You feel so lost. So cut off. So alone. Only you're not. See, in all our searching, the only thing we've found that makes the emptiness bearable is each other, 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 is each other.
What you left behind lives in our hearts and minds today and tomorrow.
The hip-hop writer is a creator, composing understanding words of culture brilliance, powering a rebalance of the elements equally, pages of rejuvenated reaffirmation, simply the almighty leadership of insightful craft work that stands to build through any confrontation born to be. Yet his daily duty is as a journalist that questions properly, uses his ears for the good to filter the real. And as the art decays by dilution, he concentrates the best again and again, exposing it in the print. Today's journalist and tomorrow's historian he listens to share. Here is that necessary attempt executed again and again and again. This is the Power Right Show on S.STREET Media. This is your brother, the lone low life with the home-sewn garment, the Boricua with the build, the true and living God, stepping in score, Sunez, Allah, a.k.a. Skillustrator Low, and we're on S.STREET Media, the Evolution Media, where I learned recently that every intrigue will have its own show, every incredible thought will have its own episode, and every timeless insight will be archived. And this particularly is about my element of hip-hop, what I like to call the hip-hop, the writer of art on art and science on music, the only show in history up to this point that's about this hip-hop writer element that I, a veteran of over 20 years, have been pioneering, working out, fucking doing it. And I'm going to continue with a whole bunch of stuff today. The name of this episode is called I Am. So I'm going to give you a whole bunch of shit that I hate, and hopefully I get through it all and we get to the stuff that I like. So we're not going to destroy, we're going to throw out the bathwater. I'm going to save the baby in this episode. All right? Very rarely done, though, but we're going to do it. But before that, some notes. My book is coming soon. It's in its editing stages. Now it's all like this digital mess right now, going from format to format. But the ebook is coming along. It should be out by the end of this month, June. And it's called The Filtered Reel, Essays from the Invisible Renaissance. The Filtered Reel, Essays from the Invisible Renaissance. The Filtered Reel was actually an essay, a column I started to write, just kind of collecting all of the good music that was coming out, and I didn't have time to write a detailed piece on it. But boy, the way the quantity of the music started to multiply and everything like that, that column just couldn't keep going. It was just too much shit. But this 2019 really being the last year of this decade, what I call the Invisible Renaissance, is giving a detail about this whole why I call this era that, what context does it have, and it's primarily using the music of 2018. Primarily, I'd say about 90% of the music talked about is from 2018. Though there's a lot of other vignettes that come from other years, and they're very important. But using the music of 2018, which was enormous though, like I ended up with almost 200 to 300 albums, and I'm not talking about shitty albums. I just deleted and didn't even bother with, you know what I mean? Like I'm not talking about a collection filled with trap bangers and fucking, you know what I mean, all that type of shit. Just quality stuff, you know what I mean? So I don't think there's been a year in hip hop with that much quantity that was of a high quality. So I used it to format this book and write all my ideas about the decade using this, and tried to be a little bit of a completist, but I couldn't do it even for 2018. It would have taken me much longer to be a completist of the entire year. That's how much stuff that was out. But that's coming out soon. I'm always talking about art, always focusing on it, and I want to read a piece. I may have read it to you, but because this episode I am calling it I Am, because this is about what this journalism is. This is about what the music should be, what it ought to be, and then what it isn't, with perfect examples. And there'll be some some casualties today making bad music that'll be used. But this is a piece that I wrote for this Art and Art recital. This is a piece I wrote. I think it was for Sleep Sinatra, who just released today a nice B-side piece, EP called The Unlearning, which I haven't heard yet, but I'm about to probably as this night becomes day, because there's a long podcast night for me. But this piece is called I Am. Sample the words I wrote under the horn. Let them couple their intentions with the insinuations of your needs. Who I am over who be damned. They look up, them look around, we see inside. Loop never respect fate, and chop prose on perfection and stanzas on revolution. Songs with no hooks end on repeat to a worthy listener. In this period of forged peace failing, the scratches drum my prose that once was overdue due I drew onto the vellum. Crates captured a chapter of antebellum. Whoso samples my life can charge through the royalties of my course. From Puerto Rican descent, true living God us sent. Equalize that well-read sunset spick accent. Oppression I circumvent. Plus lessons interpolate blue and green. Refinement, the focus of a supplement. Power, the influence to rewind the horrors for clues. Mixed in inequality of sung blues so the soldiers would see the news. The northern needs, the eastern eats, the western ways, and the southern adorances. Almighty, always. Yeah, so that was a piece I wrote. I've read that a few times. I just feel like it really encapsulates what I'm talking about. And to really introduce this, I said this is going to be an episode where I destroy and I hate everything. And then by the end, I'm going to replace it all. So it's real revolution. I'm going to destroy everything you fucking love, and then I'm going to give you something that you love. So don't tell me that you got nothing to listen to because I'm hating on everything, because by the end, you're going to have better stuff to fuck with. All right? So stop that shit. Let's start out with our News of Destruction segment. That's going to put the details on all of this, which ends up being like, it's going to be a pretty long segment. The first news, the most recent news I'll start out with, and that is that now officially Jay-Z is a billionaire. All right, and my producer is grossing me out with his cheers. We have a billionaire in hip-hop, but we have very little proof that hip-hop has strengthened black and brown communities in any way, yet we have a billionaire. Hip-hop is a counterculture. This is what it is at heart. It's not a hustle, right? The achievements of Jay-Z are one of the hustle. Capitalism at its peak is the greatest funnel for the oppression of its greatest asset. Let me repeat that again. That way we get the intensity here. Capitalism at its peak is the greatest funnel for the oppression of its greatest asset, the mind, body, and soul of the black diaspora. And at the levels of billionaireism that we were just applauding, my nigga, the checks and balances of righteousness absolutely do not exist. And the corruption is too easy to find. It takes both genius and ruthlessness to become such. And now Jay-Z is in the same company as other slayers of men, yet beloved by the people. From devils as the current living contemporary Jeff Bezos, right, who owns that fancy mail order sweatshop that we call Amazon. That's a mail order sweatshop. You know what I'm saying? You order something though, and there's guys half naked. They haven't urinated in about 14 hours, and they get you those things. And then they do a strip search of a nigga before he leaves the place to make sure he didn't cop any of the fucking Amazon goods that you need. That's the company that Jay-Z is with, Jeff Bezos. That's my nigga. My nigga Jay-Z. To legends like Andrew Carnegie, right? The ruthless industrialist, robber baron, that ruthlessly changed the landscape of the steel industry, among other industries, if I'm correct, if I remember correctly. And at the end of his career, as they all do, they live a life of philanthropy. They set their life much better. They write their history so that they could be written about in the history books with a wonderful legacy. Excuse me. And with Andrew Carnegie, though, and we're New York based here. With Andrew Carnegie, it's the public library system. A lot of people don't know that without Andrew Carnegie, there wouldn't be any New York public libraries. You know why? Because the rich were never trying to share libraries, books with you in any kind of way. You know that adage where they say that you want to hide something from a Negro, you put it in a book? Sometimes that's not with the ignorance and the savagery of the so-called Negro. That's also with the actual lack of access to books that our people had. You know what I mean? Like real references. You know what I'm saying? You know? My kid watches a lot of cartoons. She loves Beauty and the Beast cartoon. And you know when Belle was given that giant library? You know why she's never seen a library like that? Because they don't have libraries. So when Andrew Carnegie writes his philanthropy, dictates his philanthropy, and writes down his own legacy, this is the company that Jay-Z's also in. But Jay-Z is going to be a billionaire that's unlike any other billionaire. Let me tell you why. Because unlike, as a rapist, and by the way, there's a new term I have. I don't call them rappers anymore. I call them rapists, though, because they're from that same etymological root as rapist. So I call him a rapist. And Jay-Z, more than any other billionaire, can control the narrative, even better than Carnegie, even better than Bezos, because he's been rapping his entire life. Did you know he's given himself a life of press releases, of his life of struggle, his life of intensity, his life of sincerity? Oh, it's the evils. And people like, you know, all these great background scores that the way Primo saved his career in all the In My Lifetime albums, giving him a hardcore, you know, to his pop menace, though, right? That's why we were okay. It's okay he sampled Glenn Frey, one of the softest 80s musicians of all time, because at the other hand, he had Primo solidifying his stature with some of Primo's best stuff, you know? And Primo doing beat switches that only Beatnuts was doing, right? Remember Beatnuts 1, 2, 3 break? And that's the first I remember of somebody doing something deliberate like that. But anyway, that's another episode. But the rapist Jay-Z can really control his narrative, because all his raps the last 5 years, one verse every year where everybody goes, oh, that's the hottest bars of the year. Oh, they've been a philanthropic, sincerity-based, lush-driven, autobiographical press bio narrative, you know, of his struggle. And they work perfectly. So, you know, in his whole thing. And look, go research. What are the companies that he invested in, though? You know, he made most of his money off liquor and real estate. Let's give a hand for that, though. Again, the rapist Jay-Z, first billionaire. And it doesn't count for the woman beating anthemizing Dr. Dre, because he's as one brother put, he's not a rapper. He's really a producer. But at the same time, though, Forbes explains that his net savings were like 820 something million. You know what I mean? So until then, he's gonna have to beats more on other women, invest on some more beats, right? To get that money up. But let me tell you something. In my study of capitalism, once the money gets that high, you are living a life of a king in a mansion. And if you see the king in castles, that means the people live in villages. You know what I mean? And when we look at it, though, there's no better rap example of the king in a mansion, the king in his own castle, and the people living in huts and villages as peasants than you could look at Jay-Z and Marcy Projects. There's no other better example, you know what I mean? And I say that because he's never, I still haven't seen any type of atoning for his gentrification of Brooklyn and his willing activity in the gentrification of Brooklyn. But because I'm willing to go all out there and there's destruction, a complete destruction today, we're going to go to the Wu-Tang now. Yeah, we're going to go to Wu-Tang now. And we're going to talk about the other piece of news that horrified me this week. It was like a week of horrifying news. Not just regular news, but every piece of news I was just like, oh, shit. I was really horrified. This is that Ghostface Killer is on Miley Cyrus's EP trilogy. And a song called She Is Coming. I thought it was a song called She Is Coming at first. I'm not sure if that's the name of the EP or is it trilogy. I don't know what it is because I got conflicting news stories and I didn't give a damn about fact checking this. What I did fact check on Genius.com and heard the song myself, which is pitiful, is Miley Cyrus made the song with Ghostface Killer called Dream, an acronym meaning drugs rule everything around me. What horrible abuse of the original intentions of Cream. You know, the idea of Cream with its verses about hard times from Inspector Deck and Raekwon, that to this day we could argue in the street who had the better verse, right? We could argue in the street. Some brothers say Deck had the better verse. You know, we got corrupt kids, the crack rock, the straight shots, all in the block, right? Lines like that, all in the block. And then we could love Ray's because go, same damn low sweater. Like in just one line, Ray could hit it. I grew up on, you just go, I grew up, and you could do the whole verse. You could karaoke the shit. The ultimate karaoke rap track, Cream, right? For brothers that lived hard times. And it went beyond just brothers that were doing crime in the street. It was all of us who was poor. It all related to all of us because we all fucked up, you know what I mean? And, all that prison talk, a lot of people go to prison that aren't criminals, you know what I mean? A lot of people go to prison that aren't criminals, you know what I mean? Even I almost went, and I had nothing to do with it, though. It had to do with hip-hop. I was doing a story with a rapper around 44th Street, between 5th and 4th, right? And one of the brothers had cracks in his pocket, and he went to go get some Chinese food. And the D's that were looking for guns came, but we didn't have any guns. And the brother with the cracks, he happened to be getting Chinese food, and we got lucky. They made fun of us, though. They frisked us a little bit too pause-inducing. And then they laughed at our college ID, particularly, right? My college ID. They laughed at it, threw it on the floor. And then they let us go. You know what I mean? And I had to bathe extra that night. You know what I mean? Because it's the first time in my life that a man has ever touched my balls. You know what I mean? But that song is so emblematic. It's so powerful. It's so intense that it just brings out real life situations that we lived. And in this song Dream, it's literally about Miley Cyrus's obsession with drugs and how she just is a savage with the drugs. But I'm gonna do excuse me, I'm gonna do Ghostface a disservice by reading his entire verse. You know what I mean? I'm gonna do Ghostface's entire verse on this shit. Drugs rule everything around me. You could call me a king. I got it all in my store. You should crown me. Purple perk, sticky green, Molly, sippy lean. Got the white that shoulda liked the floor like in Billie Jean. Scarface nights, 500,000 on the pinky Broadway ice. We throw diamonds at weddings and y'all throw rice. Lollapalooza, Coachella Custies, that's my type. Party all night. That's gross. It's a disgusting verse though, and it's not what Cream was about. It wasn't about swimming in the gold. It wasn't about doing Scrooge McDuck with the money. You know what I mean? It wasn't about, and so this song is about swimming in the drugs. It wasn't about that. That's not what Cream was about. And it's such an, you know, there's a lot of guys that have made money off terrible, terrible rappers. Remember Raekwon did songs with, I'm forgetting his name. He's on one of the last albums, so he's such a bad rapper. I'm proud of myself for not remembering. But there was this corny, really corny rapper also that G-Rap did a song with a couple of years ago. It was terrible. And Kane, I think, had one too. And you know, when the money comes, and a lot of rappers do this. But it's just disappointing. And I find it funny that we just saw a documentary where a large chunk, over 40% of the documentary, was about why RZA has constantly had to prove he is the best knower and should be leading them in a musical direction and not them go solo out of their contracts as they were under RZA's production deal and then dealing through that production deal through to the label, and he was that middleman. It's ironic that after that we see You God talking shit, a guy who has never has picked one beat that you said, I need that beat on instrumental. You know what I mean? After the first album, there's no beats that you want to hear. And certainly very few songs that you want to hear again. You know? And no matter what anybody says, RZA had him. RZA has worthy instrumentals after Wu-Tang Forever. A lot less. You know, he went from a 90% batting average to a 500% batting average. Where half of it was like, wow, I could see that experiment. Half of it was like experimental, and half of the experiments were pretty much no grit. And then the other half was like, wow, this is what I want to hear. I wish you'd do more of it. But it's not out of line with a lot of music that comes from veteran artists, unfortunately. Look at Miles Davis, you know, post 1970s, and the frustration people have with him. But we end up with a very, very progressive funk catalog from Miles Davis. And no matter what, no matter how progressive that is, we always wanted that 1950s, 60s jazz, you know, era again, for him to mine that, even though he never did. But we do end up with something valuable, even though it wasn't what we really, really wanted. You know what I mean? But the theme of the Wu-Tang documentary, I said, was about the best knower. Essentially, is the best knower. When you have a group of any size, decisions get made by the testing and the proving of who is the best knower. The best knower may not know every single thing, but at that point, he is the best to handle the reins. And instead of trying to switch the best knower, you need to make new tests to validate who will remain or become the best knower. That's how you do it. You do not just change the best knower as a rotation of democracy. What you do is you make sure that there are tests in place to see what are we trying to do, what ought we do as a group, and we decide, and then who is the best knower to carry that out, and we test that out. But when we see people when we see Ghost do songs like this and they just do it, they think it's just like a little chip shot song, gets some more notoriety, and it does. But it also dilutes, and it simultaneously makes the cult stronger and more frivolous. It makes the Wu a more bigger and more frivolous cult. A more meaningless, yet more, you know, broad-based cult. And there's a perfect example of that, though, and it's depressing, you know. And remember Miley Cyrus, though. Remember Miley Cyrus, because now we're gonna go into another news piece I saw. How many people saw Little Nas X? I'm only gonna say that name once. Little Nas X singing in front of the kids. Maybe even my brothers in here were victim and saying like, oh, it's about the kids. We love the kids. It's about the kids though. You know what I mean? You know what I saw? I saw a whole crowd of children being abused. There was a whole audience of kids jumping up and down, singing, and I'm gonna call him Little Nas X, because his name sounds and reads. If you look at the words, it looks like some kind of new drug nasal spray. You know what I mean? Blow out your nostrils. You know, Little Nas X. Take a little bit of Little Nas X. When you take the Little Nas X, though, you'll be able to love all this music and breathe it in. But these kids breathed in that Little Nas X, and they were hopping up and down, and this is exactly what I mean. The children of black and brown, the rare few that have money or opportunity, they're giving their children musical educations, not so they just become musicians, but so they become educated and have palates for the greater depth of music, which opens up their mind to different lanes. The more diverse a musical palette is in a child, the more that they can hear, the more that they can envision. Just like the more languages a child knows, the more that their verbal palette is diverse, and the more that they construct sounds out of their own ideas, which means that they can put thought into action, because they can put thoughts into words into action. So at that same respect, music goes that long way. And so I see Little Nas X, and he's doing this show in front of the kids, and I'm seeing, I love the kids. I love that the kids have fun. And to me, it's child abuse. It's child abuse. You know? I wanted to call ACS, though. You know what I mean? And Little Nas X is he is what I call, he's a pop, a young pop rapist. You know what I mean? He's a rapist. Again, rapist being the etymological rooted term, and etymologically rooted in rapist, but in the musical rhyming form. And it's this abuse of the underdeveloped physical and mental palate that is children. Let's take this into account. He technically didn't make this song for children. You know, he can say he made it for everyone, but it's really made for the teenager. So let's start with the teenager first. The teen, an audience that hip-hop completely revolutionized by offering them an increasingly higher palette of music. Palette meaning better taste buds, right? Now, why do I say that? Because music for teens, especially black and brown teens, especially the black American teen, has always been built on frivolous bubblegum popcorn stuff. And that frivolous bubblegum popcorn stuff ends up being America's music nearly every single time, right? We could talk about doo-wop all the way to the Caribbean if we want to take it there and take it to merengue. And it's always been frivolous, and it's always been simplistic in idea, with probably sexual innuendo the only idea that gets expressed in the kind of music. The jukebox music, you know what I mean? The malt shop jukebox music, you know what I mean? You know, doo-wop, Saturday night doo-wop, you know what I mean? The Regal Beagle type shit, you know what I mean? And again, this business trend never changed. You know, we're listening for the next Johnny Two. We're looking for the next Johnny Dude two-tone. Call my producer now, 1-800-229-4466, and the next Johnny Two-Tone is going to come, and if you got the look, then dial up now, you know what I mean? It didn't matter about the music, it mattered about the look. And we just give you a generic song, and you, and you do your thing, move your hips, sway your hips, Elvis Presley your way to the top. And that didn't change for teenage music in general, youth music, really, until hip-hop, where you had a blatantly youth music that was giving you a higher lyrical complexity. At first, not necessarily the subject, but certainly, not the subject matter, but certainly the the techniques, the verbosity, like, you know, the type of wordplay, the dexterity of words, the wordplay itself. You know what I mean? Even if the subject matter was frivolous, like even if the subject matter was just sexual or just battle rap engaged, you know what I mean? And that officially went out the door by the beginnings of the golden era, the middle to late 80s, right? With with the elevation of my Mount Rushmore, you know what I mean? Where the God will do his own holy cross, right? Where my Rakim, as I do Rakim, how we got Rakim, KRS, Chuck D, Cool G Rap. See that? Why don't you give the kids? Rakim, KRS-One, Chuck D, Cool G Rap. See that? And no mystery God, real people. You know what I mean? That's my crucifix, my Mount Rushmore. Once they hit, youth music was never going to be simple again. It was going to be complex. It was going to be detailed. It was going to be layered. It was going to attack topics. It was going to be filled with things. You know what I mean? And here's the thing about it. The Little Nas X song has a lot to do with a lot of ideas. It holds a false issue that has taken precedence with the Little Nas X Old Town Road song, has taken a precedent because of its elimination. I think it was temporary from Billboard because it was not considered a country song enough. And so we, as usual, our people like, we's got to be included in the everythings. So those countries don't like us, so we got to be in there. And here's the truth. The Billboard charts are all pop, so they're all filled with a massive amount of diluted pop music in varying degrees. And each varying degree becomes a genre. So there is as much, and I'm saying it from somebody who listens to some country. And every single music, whether it's reggae, the tropical charts, right? It's so diluted. They don't even call it salsa or son or nothing like that. They call it the tropical charts. Who the fuck listens to tropical music? Right? You go back in the hood and say, hey, you listen to tropical music? The fuck is that? Tropical Fantasy was the only shit I knew about. You know what I mean? Remember Tropical Fantasy? The nuclear drink. You know what I mean? Colors that glow. You drank it already and the bottle is still glowing blue. Like, what the fuck? I just drank it. Why is it still blue? You know what I mean? A clear bottle, no longer. But the thing about it was, all of these charts are usually filled with the worst of the genre. The worst of the genre that has blown up. And the same is true, holds true for country. You know what I mean? So this is Old Town Road deserves to be on country. But the bigger issue to me, because I'm talking about the children, saving the children, is it can't be about the issues of being slighted through racism off the country charts. Now, first of all, the actual single that became the original single, I have these notes all jumbled up because I was supposed to tell you about something else here. But I'll just throw these notes out there and we'll add up the notes at the end. First off, I find it a joke, though, that people think that Billy Ray Cyrus could validate any type of music. He just spent the 2000s. I know, because my first daughter was a little girl in the 2000s. He spent the 2000s pumping his daughter's Miley Cyrus as Hannah Montana, and some of the worst music ever was recorded during that time. It was neither pop. It certainly wasn't country. It was all that mess, and it was the most frivolous stuff. It was terrible. It makes Taylor Swift look like classical music. Beethoven. Taylor Swift sounds like Beethoven after you hear Hannah Montana. So Billy Ray Cyrus isn't here by any stretch of the means to validate the song's worth of saying this is quality country. That's a joke. That's a joke in itself. You know what I mean? The song itself, though, once Little Nas X starts rapping, right? Once he starts rapping, it's really another peak of the hells of crossover rap. Hip hop is a sampling music, so obviously, as I said, it could be commercialized across any type of genre. So you could take country, you could take rock, you could commercialize it just like you could gutter it up with any type of sample. You know what I'm saying? So in this case, though, he just sampled the format of choruses and the the catchphrases of a typical country song cliche. I'll say cliche, not really a country song. You know what I mean? And there's no bounds in that. But the hypocrisy comes in that everyone loves to champion a song though because it becomes a hit. No one wants to tell you how bad it is, you know. And again, let me detail what I mean by the children again. We don't want to admonish the children for believing in themselves as we do with Little Nas X, but that's exactly what we must do, right? Belief is not confidence, and in this case, it's all semantics, so we'll let it go. But with Little Nas X, let's take a look at this type of confidence. The type of confidence that said, this is his life, I researched this, where he said the intellectual pursuit of college is not worthwhile, so he dropped out. Because remember, the pursuit of college at its worst now, let's be honest though, is one that gives you a specialized knowledge to a specialized field, but even at its best, it only gives you a larger palette of information and knowledge, and it gives you certainly resources, but isn't being a guaranteed gateway to work. So we dropped out. So it's all worth ditching in favor of 1,000,000,001 shot at making music. You know what I mean? Now, Little Nas X gets taken as like a rags to riches American dream, but the shot is very rare because music making is not based on talent. It's based on the immediate catching on of filth. So who can do the better filth, the faster filth, the better catch on in filth, right? And to actually make this song, it's really a free throw shot. I don't know if you ever heard how he made the song. You know, he found the beat on it, YouTube. He paid $30 for it, though, and he tried this, and that was it. Now, here's some fun facts, right? You know, we're going to get into it later because if you think there is any real country worth, you know, the black roots of country music, if you think there's any roots in that in this song, you don't know country. If you think that this ought to be a country song because fuck country, that's some white cracker shit, then you're not really respecting the music, and I'm going to show you why you made a mistake. There's no rule I teach all the time. But that's in the next segment. But this original Old Town Road song was 1 minute and 56 seconds, the shortest song to make the Billboard. This is before the Billy Ray Cyrus remix that became the video. The shortest song in history to make the charts since 1965. Since what? Since jukebox music, when you got paid by the amount of cents you put in the jukebox in the malt shop. So the song had to finish, you know, at the hop, at the hop. Oh, song's over. Everybody get it at the hop, and then you dance again toward your girl, right? What this kid, Little Nas X, made was literally a fucking jingle, an elongated jingle. That's what he made. He made a Snapchat jingle. And if he didn't make it as a song, it was perfect. It was going to be pitched as a advertisement for commercials. You know what I mean? And here's the thing, right? When we talk about Little Nas X, when we talk about the way he made this music, there's never a thought about him abusing the culture of hip-hop music anymore. About this kid abused the culture that we have. He abused the way that we make this stuff. They didn't talk about the value of the MC. Whether he had something truly to share, whether he had props or skills in any way, none of that. So we have been desensitized to that, right? Just as we're celebrating Jay-Z as the first official rap billionaire is emblematic of this, though, right? My goodness. Couple this with the details of his young life, right? As I said before, right? That begin with the Dark Ages. This is why I call the 2000s the Dark Ages, because the work of it popularized the Machiavellian hustle of the ends justifying the means, and now the quality or the integrity of the song doesn't matter. What matters is the end means of the song. So you can make the most piece of shit song, but if you knew that I could actually rap, even though I didn't on this hit song, I didn't do shit of that. If you knew that one time in my whole life I ever did rap, you say it was okay. And that's what we did with the Ludacris's. That's what we did with the Eminems. That's what we did with with the Nellies. That's what we do constantly with everybody else. They make a piece of shit song. He said, you know, if you go back to the records he made when he was a baby, like when he was 6 months, he really could rhyme though. You know? My goodness though. My producer's doing the Old Town Road dance though. You know what I mean? I'm about to saddle up and get out of here, right? But and you know what though? The kid's history is nothing to do with hip hop, but everything to do with making a, you know, using social media to make an image of himself, to be an internet personality. And he took many shots trying to be an internet personality, and none of that worked. So he tried his hand at rap. And what did he do? He took the most formulaic version of rap right now. He took country, he made it trap, and he added the country with it, gave it the gimmick of country trap. So we have labeled feces, and now it has its food, and now it's found its way into the food pantry. You know what I mean? So, like I said many times, trap is a formula of simplicity designed for brothers living supposedly real lives. I say that because trap can absorb the real criminal or the pretendable. It really can. You can't listen to a trap song and go, yo, he's a real criminal. He could be a pretendable. You know what I mean? And the hustle with a lack of talent and musicianship to record. That's what trap allowed. You know, best exemplified by How to Hustle and Win. You know what I mean? Which really should be a documentary. It shouldn't be a fictional movie. It's really a documentary. A true to life story. How to Hustle to Win. You know what I mean? But, so after 20 years of doing this since the 2000s, by the time Little Nas X rhymes and makes his hit, this is already accepted that the young youth would sell out before they were even bought in. You got to be bought in to sell out. Now you sell out before you're bought in. That's crazy. I'm coughing here. I'm choking on the fakeness. I'm choking. I might need help. But now I admonish the elders. The video has Chris Rock in it. I don't ever want to hear Chris Rock tell me about real hip hop is. I don't want to have him tell me about what the fucking 90s were. I don't want to tell me about Wu-Tang Clan. I don't want to tell him to tell me about he did skits with Method Man. I don't want to hear anything about him talking about real hip hop when he comes out in the video for Lil Nas X. You know what I mean? And I saw it immediately as a turncoat stance, what Chris Rock did. You know what I mean? Why? Because when we look at the youth and we look at what they end up liking, when we see those kids cheering, why do we constantly say when we see kids make bad music, why do we say we respect the children for doing what they do because it blew up when they're doing trash? That means you disrespect them. You're looking at them like lesser puppies. You know what I'm saying? When you go, hey, roll over, and the puppy rolls over, you go, good dog, good dog, good dog. That's what we do to our youth. And they like that song. Yeah, it's a piece of shit song, though. It's a piece of shit song, though. It's basically a Dunkin' Donuts jingle. You know what I mean? It's a piece of shit song. Oh, that's cute. You know, look at the kids jumping up and down. We constantly do that. And I'm saying, do we love it as a whole masses of youth jumping up and down? But yo, go to your home. Are you doing this with your child? When your child likes the stupidest mess, are you doing that? Because remember, the kid isn't stupid. A child is not stupid. Their just palate is not developed. Their palate is not developed. And that's why the jingles and the catchy songs you're supposed to play for them are supposed to be educational. They're supposed to, in some kind of ways, catch some kind of rhythm to it. This is my thing. I can't get away from it. Because Lil Nas X, though, is at least the 100th rap single since the 2000s of a catchy bullshit single. Come on, how many times do we have to go all the way back to Laffy Taffy? You know what I mean? And all the singles that we let go and say, yo, that's what them niggas do. That's what them niggas do. You know what I'm saying? They made and how many country jingles do we have to hear? You know what I'm saying? Yo, that's what them niggas do. It was hot though. It was hot though. Yeah. Hey, it's hot in here. Blah 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 blah. Hey, it's hot in here. You know. Oh, look, he took a nursery rhyme and he made a rap song out of it. Wow, he's such a genius. And now that gets labeled as genius, and the standards have been lowered. You know what I mean? And on the other side, you got the rich kids, a lot of white folk, mixed in with the occasional black and brown that get to pass and get the opportunity, and they're listening to real music. And their palate is deep, and they may not become musicians because their palate is so deep that they're seeing deeper out of every single issue and topic that gets presented to them. So they're not stuck having to have a wicked jump shot or crack rock, right? Or rap lyric or rap gimmick lyric, right? So to really end this segment, right? The reason that Chris Rock did this was because he chose the politics and of the racial issue with it. Because at the end he goes, he's watching him ride and he goes, boogity, boogity. And we all know that's a racial reference to what was told to our black American brothers and sisters as spooks, as the racial term. And he's saying, look, listen to that. You see your man racing through the charts, boogity, boogity. And that was the joke that Chris Rock decided. But he did it at the sacrifice of the music, And what I'm saying is that I have confidence in the youth, that if they hear more music, they have a better palate for music. And that they wouldn't accept Lil Nas X. Rakim was in his teens. Nas was in his teens. Many of the great MCs that I write about today were rhyming in their teens. And they're rhyming ill shit. We need a better palate. We need a more deserving palate. You know what I mean? And this is why I judge that. You know what I mean? Now, this will probably end the show. But I can never leave you like this. And if I'm saying one of the major rules that I have is that, and when you deal with music, the reason I am so anti-trash, right, is that nearly 99% of the time, though, when you say, oh, F it, there's no good music anyway in country. That ain't black people's music. That's all white people music. And this and that, you're usually not knowing that we're the root to all music. And you're usually, when you accept bad music, I like music that trap song, reggaeton is hot, etc., etc. What you're missing is what I call, I got this term here. Let me look it up for you. I call it it's a phrase. I call it the opportunity cost of trash. It's real simple. In business, we have the opportunity cost. That means that if my producer spent this amount of money on these microphones, he couldn't spend said amount of money with something else. If you spent the opportunity cost of trash is if you spent your opportunity cost of time listening to this, then you definitely couldn't do it listening to that. And the thing is, you say there's no existence of better music, so you absolve yourself by acting like you don't know. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, KRS One shit. MCs act like they don't know. Listeners act like they don't know. Now, one of my favorite artists, though, I'm going to tell you where I found out about her. And we're going into our classic crate segment, though. Even though this is a crate, it's a crate because when you go get it, you're going to have to dig for it and you're going to say, oh, shit. But I was watching Nashville. I was into that show. And a lot of it, though, was really good. A lot of the music was really well made. You know what I mean? In fact, in the one season I saw of Empire, season 1, I found Nashville to be a better show and more realistic than the fantastical farce that Empire became by the end of season 1. By the end of season 1, it already became farcical. You know what I mean? It already was, well, it might have been fun, but it was farcical. It wasn't really, had that industry proof. It didn't have that, what's it really like to make music as real musicians, not as we got to make a hot single type musicians. Empire gives you, yo, we got to make the hot shit type. That's not real musicianship. You know what I mean? The struggle of making a hit while you don't want to make hits and you want to make quality music, Nashville was more on that side of things. You know what I mean? And there was one sister that got onto the later seasons. I think it was season 5. Her name was Rhiannon Giddens, and that's why I learned about her. Rhiannon Giddens, I'm going to say this, I want my producer to recognize this. I think she is a legend of the era, and when we look at the eras, she will be at the top of soul music and singers, pure, soulful, perfect singers up there in this era, the way Sarah Vaughan is at the top of the 20s, 30s, and 40s, whatever, right? The way, not 20s and 30s, 40s, 50, really 50s, 60s, right? The way Whitney Houston was the 80s, the way Aretha was the 70s, because Rhiannon Giddens is one of the most progressive musicians and one of the most beautiful voices I have ever heard. I'll read you straight from Wikipedia. Rhiannon Giddens is an American musician. She's a founding member of the country blues and old-time music band Carolina Chocolate Drops, where she's the lead singer, violinist, and banjo player. She's a native of Greensboro, North Carolina, an alumna of the North Carolina School of Science and Mathematics, and a 2000 graduate of Oberlin Conservatory at Oberlin College, where she studied opera, which means that her ranges are near pretty much infinite. And when she was with the Carolina Chocolate Drops, they were doing a lot of traditional, they were doing a lot of old Negro spirituals, really preserving a lot of the old music that a lot of stuff has not been recorded. And so her recorded versions end up being the best, faithful, up-to-date sounding versions you could hear of that type of music. So her music literally is Black history when you listen to Carolina Chocolate Drops. But as a soloist, when she went solo and made her solo albums, it's probably some of the best singing that you will hear. You know what I mean? And it's everything is in there: soul, R&B, blues, bluegrass, folk, Negro spirituals. It goes ever back, around, and within the scope of the entire Black American diaspora. And it's just it's beautiful music. You know what I mean? And all her music is always layered with the intention, the theme, and the symbolism of the Black struggle to freedom and the Black struggle to elevate that freedom. And it's always layered with the beauty of her vocals and the depth of her accompanying musicianship and even the song stylings. You know, it has a complex, you know, and sometimes overbearing to the average person. But once you get into it, it's her singing beauty that keeps you enthralled and then allows you to slowly become a more educated listener as you go along, you know. And most of her music, if you had to categorize it, it ends up being country, because country's roots really take a lot of the old Negro music, folk music. You know, let's put this on the side. The most popular white music genres are based in the blues, rock, and country. They don't exist without the blues. And the best country and rock musicians of today, of the best ones, are rooted in the blues. Listen to the Black Keys, as an example. They're rooted in the blues. You know what I'm saying? Go back to Led Zeppelin. That literally was blues makeovers. That was blues remakes. You know what I mean? So if you want to hear her country roots, like real pure, listen to that album Tomorrow's My Turn, right? Where you have, I think, one of the most beautiful songs I ever heard, She's Got You. Her version I ended up loving the best. And she also does Nina Simone's Black is the Color. And if you really want to see how she's a song interpreter, a stylist of her own, you could listen to Nina Simone's version and then listen to her version and see the contrast. You know, Nina punctuated, whereas because Rhiannon Giddens' voice is so lush and gorgeous and hits so many peaks, she can soar through it and reach different emotive levels. You know, it's just something to behold. But then when I talk about that deeper theme, the Black experience, the 2017 album Freedom Highway had such songs. And I'm just going to read you what they say about it. I'm not even going to analyze this shit. There's a song she wrote and performed on it called At the Purchaser's Option. This is how NPR described it, and it's one of the better songs of the century, they called it. NPR said, in the emotional opening track, At the Purchaser's Option, Giddens creates a vivid picture of a slave woman in colonial America who's about to be sold and is trying to decide whether to fall in love with her child. She created the tale based on an actual advertisement for a slave woman with a newborn baby who could accompany the mother at the purchaser's option. Think of that. Think of how she's making her songs here. Then there's also Julie, which is a slave narrative she wrote into song, inspired from an excerpt from a book called The Slave's War by Andrew Ward. So that, and no matter how heavy the album gets, you can always get lost in the beauty of it. And it parallels what I'm saying about Rihanna Giddens. I've never heard her say that she has any kind of root in hip hop. You know, like she knows anything about hip hop. But when you see someone going back in history, learning her roots, and then sampling from it, sampling to make the lyrics, sampling ideas, correlating, interpolating to make song lyrics, she has a hip hop ethos without even knowing it. This is what hip hop should have been. This is what, if I said what should be hip hop soul music, this is what would be it. And I probably am the only person that will ever say that. Even Rihanna Giddens would be like, probably go like, I don't know no hip hop like that. You know what I mean? Because I don't know. She's never, her Instagram is filled with education that I learn about all the time. About old music, about her music. She even has an album out now called Songs with these other Native American musicians called Songs of My Native Sisters. And it's an amazing album as well. So she taps into all the indigenous roots of music. And I'll leave with this, some thoughts about her album this year, 2019's There Is No Other. It's done in tandem with an Italian musician called Francesco Turrisi, right? And he's an instrumentalist that really plays a lot of different types of music, and he plays a lot of the southern Italian music. You know what I mean? Those Moorish rooted folk out there in what was Andalusia, you know, when the Moors ruled it. You know, neighbors to Andalusia in Spain. And throughout There Is No Other, I see like it's kind of a melding of the previous two albums I talked about. Her 2015 album, Tomorrow's My Turn, and 2017's Freedom Highway. In that, it has the seriousness of direction, but it also has a real country element to it, where when you hear the songs, you say, wow, this is rooted in country. But the magic of it, and I go through songs, is that the diverse instrumentation could be overbearing, all these new instruments you never heard. But at the same time, it still keeps its root in country and in the blues and in soul that it's very easy to embrace. You know what I mean? There's the magic of something that we don't really, you know, that I haven't heard said about Giddens, but a lot of her most beautiful songs are with lyrics that she writes that are extremely minimalist, like the song 10,000 Voices, you know what I mean? Where the intensity of the song is all based on the, you know, the power that's evoked in her changing octaves as each verse goes along. It's just something you got to hear, you know what I mean? And there's the forgotten art of taking on standards, which is why I say Beyonce is not a great soul singer, because she doesn't take on standards. Sorry, that was a fail with Etta James at last. They need to have Etta James do that, you know what I mean? But that's another thing. I love Etta James, right? But when she does that, when Rihanna does that with Wayfaring Stranger, amazing. There's the different instrumentation, like the use of the daf. You know, the daf is a Middle Eastern instrument, and obviously something that Turrisi knows very well. And if you hear it, though, it's perfect. It would be great sampled in hip-hop because it's like a kick drum, but it has like a reverbing echo that kind of amplifies the snare. You know what I'm saying? So it's real hard to do. And there's just you know, a massive worth of quality throughout this album as I close out. You know what I mean? I have so much more to say about it. I might addendum it, you know, in the next time. But go online, look for Rihanna Giddens. You know, after you dance like a buffoon and do your backflip into your country regalia with the old town road, go and listen to some real black music that's rooted in country made today. You know what I mean? Find Rihanna Giddens, though. You know what I mean? Real talent that should be applauded. And I'm not talking about good talent. I'm talking about all-time Hall of Fame talent. You know what I mean? I didn't even get to talk about the records. You know, last week I talked about some of the best 2019 records to buy this year. I go into all that next time. But remember, I destroyed a lot of music today, but I probably gave you the best female vocalist you'll hear in this entire decade. Guaranteed. If not, you give me your fucking money back. Until next time, there'll be a lot more stories to tell, writings to recite, and records to rewind and reminisce. I'm your host, Soonius Allah, a.k.a. Skillustrated Low. And as always, the Power Right Show is a never, I repeat, never respect fake broadcast. Peace.